Hey guys, so last video I used this microphone for the first time and I was still speaking at the volume that I'm used to speaking when making these videos. Yeah, and so because of that, the audio came out harsh. Um, and so, yeah, I'm going to try my best to speak softer in this one. Um, but yeah, please continue to bear with me as I continue to try and improve the visual and audio quality of these videos. But okay, today's video is the third follow-up to my Smoke and Mirrors video essay, and this one will be addressing feedback from the final three sections of that video essay. So if you've not seen that in its entirety, I highly recommend that you go watch that before continuing on with this video. Otherwise, I don't think you'll get anything out of the rest of this. I will put a link to the Smoke and Mirrors playlist right here and in the description.
But if this was the Man in Black, what was he trying to achieve? Well, consider what almost happened if not for the pure dumb luck that John and Jack arrived at the Swan when they did.
Hey!
By terrorizing Kate during the one time she was left alone in the hatch, due to Shannon's funeral, Sawyer, or the entity speaking through him, very nearly caused the countdown to expire and catastrophe to ensue. But there may have been an additional motive at play. Consider the other time in this episode that a delirious Sawyer says something upsetting to someone at his bedside.
What?
Where is she?
You mean Kate?
I love her.
Now, does this have to have been the Man in Black speaking through Sawyer? Of course not. But we have established it's possible that it was, and it is therefore worth noting what his hypothetical motive may have been. This confession of Sawyer's does add more friction to the already tense relationship between him and Jack, once again increasing the odds of later conflict.
So the first thing that I want to address about part 5, it actually isn't a comment that I received. It's just something that when going back to this after I had completed it, I do feel like I could have made my point a bit clearer regarding the Sawyer and Jack conflict that I believe the Man in Black encouraged. As I say in the video, I don't think that anyone has to accept that the Man in Black was the one speaking through Sawyer when he says to Jack that he loves her. I really don't have a strong opinion about that at all. I think it's worth considering that that could have been what happened, but, depending on your interpretation of Sawyer and, the degree to which he had feelings for Kate at this point after the first season, and the degree to which he was aware of that on some level. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer about any of that. I do think that on its own, the initial explanation I give for why the Man in Black would be appearing to Kate as the horse and why he would speak to her through Sawyer. In this video, I argued that he did that in an attempt to get the button to not be pushed. And I think that in and of itself is a perfectly good explanation for what was going on there. However, what that does not explain is why the Man in Black would bother to reappear to Kate and Sawyer at the end of the episode. By that point, him attempting to prevent the button from being pushed obviously failed, and Kate has reached this level of catharsis regarding what she thought she was experiencing, and so that would raise the question of what would the point be of the Man in Black appearing one final time as the horse. And that's the point at where I think he was trying to feed into the potential conflict between Jack and Sawyer. Because, as I just said, Kate has reached a point of catharsis regarding what she did to her biological father, and she has reached that through Sawyer. And so for this horse to appear one final time to her and Sawyer and kind of confirm in her mind what just happened, and confirm the closure that she feels she just reached, it further solidifies that bond she has with Sawyer. Not to mention that catharsis, where she kind of addresses why her feelings for Sawyer make her sick, kind of helps her get past that. It makes her more comfortable with her feelings for Sawyer. And so all of that ensures that Kate and Sawyer are going to be a lot closer going forward. And because the Man in Black likely knows what Sawyer said to Jack, regardless of whether or not the Man in Black was behind that, because he probably knows that that was said to Jack, making Kate and Sawyer closer after she has kissed Jack and, they had that whole moment, that lays the seeds for the conflict in the back half of the season between Jack and Sawyer. And the examples that I showed visually in the video, I don't think were the best examples I could have used. I think the best place to start by showing that conflict would have been when Jack goes and is ransacking Sawyer's tent for the medicine. I don't think that Jack would have been so confrontational about that if not for the tension that had been built up because of this love triangle and the recent developments within that. And so because Jack is so confrontational and in Sawyer's eyes an asshole about it, that's what leads Sawyer to pull his con, in which he takes control of all of the guns and all of the medicine. And so I think that final appearance of the horse was the Man in Black playing his role in getting those tensions to escalate and for potential conflict to ensue. User Lucas43434 says, I wonder if Sayid seeing the cat from his past in Season 3 was meant to be connected to Kate seeing the horse. So Lucas is referring, of course, to the cat that Mikhail has at the flame station, which he calls Nadia. And when I was originally, conceiving of this video essay and outlining it, I did, for a time, consider addressing this cat. But as this essay evolved in the writing stage, and it really became more about arguing each case for why I think the Man in Black was behind these apparitions or mysterious appearances, as it turned more into that, it didn't really make sense for me to include the cat, because I don't really think that was the Man in Black. I think you could read it that way up to a point. What I mean is that Mikhail seems to believe that, he's had this cat for a long time, and therefore it just coincidentally looks like the cat from Saeed's past. That said, because Mikhail, as we later find out, knows all about the personal lives of the 815ers, I do like the idea that the cat wasn't actually named Nadia, and he just called her that to kind of mess with Sayid. Of course, he does have that poster of the gymnast named Nadia, so, there's a good chance he's telling the truth, but, I just kind of like the idea that he was just messing with him. So I do think that there was originally a cat at that station that was not the Man in Black, and that coincidentally looked like the cat from Saeed's past. But if you wanted to read the cat in those scenes as the Man in Black, the cat does kind of pull at the rug, which gives away Beatrice Clue's hiding spot. And, again, a conflict or a shootout of sorts does arise from that. So you could read it as, the Man in Black recently killed or, found the cat dead and then took its place and then took advantage of that situation. I don't personally think that that's what happened, but, it's a cool theory and there's nothing that says it can't be true. But Lucas's point about, wondering if that was meant to be connected to Kate seeing the horse, I think on a thematic level, yes. While I think the horse was the Man in Black and I think the cat wasn't, on a more thematic level as far as, the characters seeing something that reminds them of a specific part of their past, and then that influences their behavior in the present day storyline, that is absolutely something that happens over and over again in the show, and it's not always the Man in Black. I think it is a lot more often. I think he is behind it a lot more often than a lot of people seem to think or be willing to consider. But, there are plenty. I mean, just the heroin being on the island for Charlie. That's, if the Man in Black wasn't behind that, but that's something where he's facing a demon from his past, and he has to deal with that and hopefully overcome it. And so, yeah, the cat is just another in a long line of examples where a character encounters something from their past, or that reminds them of something from their past. And again, that influences, in this case, Saeed's choice at the end of the episode. He chooses not to kill Mikhail specifically because he's remembering what the woman he tortured said to him when he was her captive. She says that the cat reminds her of what those kids did, of what we all can do. And she says she will not be that. And obviously that's what Saeed's thinking of because of that cat. And that I think is why he decides not to kill Mikhail. So I don't really have any feedback to respond to in regards to part 6. I thought there was something that I wanted to say about it, but I really can't remember what that would have been. So I guess we're just going to move on to part 7.
Whereas in the season 4 finale, the moment Christian appears is almost the exact moment the Man in Black would have wanted the freighter destroyed. Every remaining candidate we know of, with the exception of Locke and Sawyer, the latter of whom had jumped from the helicopter at the last minute, was now on that freighter. And even with the helicopter narrowly escaping the explosion, thanks to even more of the Man in Black's machinations, the island was minutes away from being moved, leaving no viable option for a safe landing, and pretty much guaranteeing its passengers' deaths at sea.
This next comment is from Homo Sapiens 99, who says, I always wondered why the Man in Black wanted the island moved. Your explanation makes so much sense. So yeah, there's a lot more to the Man in Black's season 4 plan, as I see it, that I will get into in the future. But the other thing that I think's worth pointing out is that so when Kimi goes back to the freighter and accesses the secondary protocol, that's where he reads that Ben is going to go to the Orchid station. And Captain Galt asks Kimi how Mr. Widmore could possibly know that. And Kimi's answer to that is just that Widmore is a very smart man. But if we think about that a little deeper, what's really interesting about Widmore knowing that Ben would go to the Orchid is the fact that at this point in that episode, Ben didn't know that he was going to go to the Orchid. Ben and Locke and Hurley go to who they think is Jacob to ask what they should do. And the Man in Black is the one that tells them to move the island. He's the one that tells them to go to the Orchid station. So the question naturally becomes, how would Widmore know what Ben's going to do before Ben knows what he's going to do? And there are two possible explanations, each of which I like quite a bit, and each of which I think is extremely likely, for how he knew this. One is that the Man in Black is pulling Widmore's strings to at least some degree, and therefore is responsible for Widmore knowing what Ben is going to be instructed to do. Or the other possibility is that Matthew Abaddon, who has demonstrated knowledge of future events, would have been the one to tell Widmore, okay, this is what's going to happen after this happens. And he could have been the one to tell Widmore that Ben is going to go to the Orchid station. I feel like every time I bring up the fact that Abaddon has knowledge of future events, I have to reiterate why I feel Abaddon is the one giving future knowledge to Widmore instead of the other way around. And the main thing that I point to is Abaddon's visit with Locke shortly after Locke was paralyzed. We know that as a teenager, Widmore did indeed meet John in 1954, but he didn't learn how he came to the island. He didn't learn when he came to the island. And he sure as hell never learned that going on a walkabout was what ended up getting him on the plane that brought him to the island. So Abaddon visiting Locke and telling him to go on the walkabout, we know that Widmore did not send Abaddon to do that. At least not from meeting him in the past. There are other arguments you could possibly make, like him working with Eloise, which I've also talked about before, how there's evidence that they were not working together. I will also link to the video in which I got into that in depth. And the only other real option for how Widmore could have known to send Abaddon to Locke like that would be the Man in Black somehow communicating that to him, for example, through a dream. But my issue with that is that I strongly prefer the idea that the Man in Black didn't know anything about Locke until he arrived on the island and until they have that face-to-face encounter in the 4th episode of the series. I think in retrospect and on a rewatch, it makes that scene much more meaningful if we have the interpretation that this was the moment where the Man in Black scans Locke and comes to understand who he is and just how easily he can manipulate this guy to reach his own goals. So all of that's to say, I do strongly believe that Abaddon is his own independent source of knowledge regarding future events. But in the case of, sending the mercenary team to the Orchid station, in that case, I do like the idea that the Man in Black is responsible for giving Widmore that knowledge because the Man in Black knows that he's going to send Ben to the Orchid station.
Unfortunately for the Man in Black, Penny's boat found and rescued the group that would become the Oceanic Six. After this, for the first time since their construction, the Man in Black had unfettered access to the now abandoned barracks. I believe this is when he first discovered most of the remaining candidates had ended up in the 70s and by all accounts been vaporized in the Jughead detonation. At which point the Man in Black would come to believe that ensuring the return of the candidates who left would result in them simply vanishing from existence, from his point of view, never to return.
Jimmy Davis 7587 says, "Great theory, but why wouldn't the Man in Black want to keep the candidates off island? He ultimately wants them gone, and bringing them back to the island is a massive risk." So yeah, my response to this was that the Man in Black doesn't just need the candidates off the island, he needs them dead. If he didn't need them dead, and he, would be fine with them just being off island, then he wouldn't have needed the whole elaborate plan to get the bomb on the submarine. He could have just let the submarine leave the island as it otherwise would have, and then he could have proceeded with deactivating the source. Furthermore, even if you don't subscribe to the theory I put forth, that the Man in Black was the one, trying to get Hurley and Jack and everybody else, all the other candidates, to return to the island, even if you don't subscribe to that, we do know for a fact that the Man in Black was trying to get them to come back, because we know it was him in the frozen wheel chamber with Locke telling him that he needed to get everyone to come back, and telling him how to do that, telling him that he needs to find Eloise Hawking. So yeah, the point is that the candidates being off island didn't make any difference to the Man in Black. Them still being alive is what was keeping him from his goal of escaping. So that's it for the comments that I received on YouTube, but I did share the completed video essay on Reddit, and I got some feedback regarding the channel more broadly. One of those pieces of feedback were once again about the audio quality, and it was actually the same person, Trouble on Demand, recommending that I get a lav mic. So I don't really need to go back over that, but there was another piece of feedback that I did want to address. It looks like this person has deleted their Reddit account since leaving this comment, so unfortunately I can't cite who left it. But they said, Your content is great, but lose the intro where you apologize for your theories and get straight into it. I love that you match the orientation video style. Any videos on the source would be great. So, regarding that first part, I can see what they're saying as far as apologizing for my theory. I don't agree with that characterization in every case. I get what they're referring to in the case of Smoke and Mirrors, but I think the deeper point about getting straight into it is definitely valid because, there's sometimes videos that I go back to and, every time I watch one of those older intros, I'm kind of like, man, like that's so not relevant anymore, because I use those intros to give updates about the channel that are relevant at the time the video is released, but are completely irrelevant to anybody watching the video down the road, like in the future. And indeed, some of those updates are no longer accurate. I might decide I'm going to start doing something or I'm going to tackle this topic next, but then for whatever reason I decide, okay, actually I need to talk about this first. What I'm trying to say is that almost none of those intros tend to age well. And I do agree with this person's point that I need to kind of get into the actual video essay much more quickly. Now, each time I get a new Patreon supporter that is added to the candidate cave and wall, I do like giving those personalized shout outs, and I do want to continue doing that. So right now what I'm leaning towards is keeping the intro section of these video essays, but really just a very brief intro into what the topic is going to be about, and then if there's a shout out to give, do that the way that I have been, and then straight into the video. Like I said, that's what I'm leaning towards right now. But if down the road I feel like maybe I need to do the candidate thing at the end of the video, maybe that's what I'll do. But yeah, at least for now, I think I'm going to keep it at the front. As for what they say about the orientation video style, I plan on keeping that. Now that I have the lav mic, that should improve the audio quality. The other issue that I've been running into these last few videos that I've made, the video essay videos that I've made, in order to get the filter that I use onto it to make it look like an old-timey film, I have to, I've started editing for the most part on the Mac again, but the filter comes from my phone, the app that I use to edit on my phone. And so I have to transfer it to the phone, put the filter on it, and then upload it to YouTube. And somewhere in that process, the video seems to lose a degree of quality. And I don't think it's the filter itself. I think just getting it onto my phone, it is causing the issue. But the point is, I'm considering just getting rid of the filter. I haven't really had any issues about automated copyright claims. I think that everybody will still kind of get what I'm going for without the filter. So I don't think that they necessarily need them. And if the audio quality is going to be better anyways, that also kind of loses a degree of the orientation film style. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just letting you guys know. You might see the filter disappear on those. I'm continuing to try and make it easier for me to make these videos and make them, in a high quality way. And the last thing that they said about any videos on the source would be great. Interestingly enough, I've been getting a lot of completely unrelated comments, some of which have been on the follow-ups that I've already done, the first and second follow-ups to Smoke and Mirrors, as well as comments elsewhere or messages elsewhere, where basically the topic of the bigger picture, what is the point of Lost, by the end of it. It obviously it deals with these themes of fate and choice and good and evil and right and wrong, and And then there's the spirituality element of the flash sideways, and how does the source fit into that? And a lot of these things it's stuff that I am not as eager to talk about because it is like much more subjective and open to interpretation. Like in a way, like it's literally about like belief and what you believe. I don't know. It's much more. It's much more of a personalized aspect of the story that it feels less correct for me to sit down and like tell you guys how I see it as if I'm telling you how to see it. That's why I haven't really gone into a lot of those things, and why I haven't been planning to go into some of those things. But the way that these things have been coming up lately, and the interesting back and forth that it has encouraged me to get into, in some cases I haven't responded as of yet, or I've only responded up to a certain point, because it's a much deeper conversation to get into, and I'm trying to continue working on these videos as well as some other stuff I have going on in my life. So yeah, I haven't been able to get too deep into those conversations, but because they keep coming up, I am thinking that I am going to do a video that is going to get more into that stuff and kind of talk about my perspective on that bigger picture and why I feel the way I do about certain things. So yeah, basically, the next video you should be seeing from me from this channel, it's going to be an announcement video. I have an exciting, I feel it's exciting, I hope you guys will find it exciting, but I have an update to give you guys regarding what you're going to be seeing from me. And yeah, just other updates in general. So that'll be the next video, but then I think the video after that, I'm actually going to do that bigger picture discussion. But alright, that's everything I have for today. I hope you guys will come back for the next one.
Oh, you're still here. Hopefully that means you enjoyed this video. If so, please consider sticking around and being a constant for this channel by clicking right up here to subscribe. And don't forget to hit the bell icon if you would like to be notified when more videos like this one arrive. In the meantime, feel free to check out previous content from this channel by clicking here or here. Oh no. Please subscribe.